Today I'm going to explain about my API, which is Malaysia News and Weather API. And before I going to the backend code, explain the backend code, and I will be briefly explain how the user interface works. And it's a very simple user interface. It will retrieve data from third-party API, and I will be able to save and put inside my API. And this my news will be store the API or will be storing my API, and it will allow me to edit and delete as well. And when I press for the third party API side, I will be having a category before I save inside my API. And when I press of any of them and I press search, then it will having different of the category. And when I press the save button, then it will save inside my API, and it will also show unsuccessful if any error occur. And now it's showing successful, which means it's saving successful inside into my database. And when I come over this here, then it will display thing the database the API of it will display my API. And as we can see, this is the data that I saved just now, and I will be able to edit. And when I press on the edit, it will come over these pages, and I will be allowed to edit the title and description as well. And when I press edited something and press update, it will show successful, and it will also show unsuccessful when it is unsuccessful. And as we can see, this editor is added, and when we come over my API, and it's showing edited. And I also added another features to view the Malaysia weathers, and it will retrieve data from the party and display inside here. And I will be allowed to check any of the state inside Malaysia and press on search, then it will display the temperature of the state. And that's all for the user interface front end. For the next part, we'll be going to explain about the backend code. And as we can as for to initialize the MongoDB, we will need to include the package of Mongoose, which is known as MongoDB, and also the RESTful API, which is expressed in the Node.js. And it will having the function of to in order to control the MongoDB, for example like .get, .post. And to connect to the MongoDB, we will need to enter this code and give it the port to the server. And we also need to create a scheme for the DB. As we can see, we will having a table for the mongoose, and it will based on the table to posting to the MongoDB based on this object. And as we can see, I also included the validation as the require, and it will make sure the things that are not now and before sent into the MongoDB. And as the table will having the title, description, link, and image, and also the date. Before going to explain how's the client react with the server, I will briefly explain how to use Postman React with my server. As I set up a few functions for my backend, as the first one will retrieve all the data, and from the post table, as you can see, it will having a constant function and post file, then it will retrieve the data. As we just need to follow the the link, the URL that I set, and follow the express function. And here, as we can see, is .get. Then I just follow the port that I set, that I set, and the URL. And when I press on send, then it will retrieve all the API. And I wouldn't be explaining one by one because it will waste a lot of time. And for the next, by using Postman, and the next one will be having an object in order to save into my DB. And it's some sort of thing like here I will need to select pause, and we can imagine as like a React sending a request to backend, and it will having something like this, an object like this. Then it will of course need follow the object that preset lah. Then it will having a error try catch error message to validate it. And for the next one will be having a function of getting getting the specific post. Means that the specific ID I will require to enter this URL and slash and get the ID, then it will display the data. And the next one will be the delete, and I will need to select the delete, and then just based on the URLs press the delete, and then simply and select any of the, then press on the send, and it will delete the data. And then for the next one will be batch, which is as known as the update function, and it will retrieve the ID as we can see is the request params post ID, and it will be adding inside the URL, and then we're having a set object, and as we can see I will only be able to edit the title and the description, and it will also having a try catch to validate it. And then that's all for the backend function of my Express. Okay, for the next part we'll be going to explain about how's the front end react with the back end, and also the code of the front end. As we know, I will be implement the framework of React, and most of the time we'll be writing on app.js. And as the first part of the app.js, we'll be having a navigation bar as known as here, and it will implement a package of React router DOM, and then it will switch when I press on the one of the route and the link, and then run the function that I set below. And then for the first part will be for the first function will be the Malaysian news, as known as these pages, and then it will having a form that will be set inside here, and then above will be the row, as known as we'll be using the class of news rows, and the news row will be inside here, and then it will also having a save button. And then the initial of this function will be retrieve data from third-party API. As you can see here, we've got fetch the function, and then set the data for my variable, and then it will display row by row. And then I also allow to set the change the query by selecting here, and then the query, once I press on the search button, which is on submit, it will run this function get search, and then the query will change, and then the query here will also change, and then it will fetch the data again and change the data from here. As we know that here will also having a save function as set as here, and when I press on the save button, it will handle this save, and then retrieve all the data, and then fetch the function that from the back end, and then post into my database based on the object that I set, and it will having a validation save successful, or whether when any of the problem occur, then it will unsuccessful. And for the next function will be after the Malaysian news will be my news, which is known as here. It will display all the data from my API, and I will be allowed to edit and delete as well. And how's the edit and delete code works, and it will, once I press on the delete function, it will come over here. Once I press on the delete function, then it will fetch data from my fetch data from my backend, I fetch the link from my backend, and then I will need to set the ID as well, and based on the ID it will delete the data, and then it will having a validation as well. And for the part of the edit, you'll be required to come over here, and once I press on, as we can see, once I press on the edit function, edit button, it will run this link, and as long as this path new this link will be set on app.js as well, and it will run this function, and edit news function here. And then for the initial state, I will be required to retrieve data from the original data from my API. As we can see here, once I press the edit button, sorry for the lag, and it will retrieve the data. And when I press on the edit button, and when I press on the update button, it will having a update button on here. It will running this get update function. As we can see, the button on here, update button, will be running. Once I submit this form, it will run this get update button function, sorry, and then this function will be using the function that I set on the server, and then based on the, I will require to set a object as well, and then it will update, it will validate it and check whether update is successful or not, and it will display to the user. And for the next function will be the my MalaysiaNewsAndWeather check function. It will retrieve data from third-party API. As we can see, the function is inside here. Sorry, it's weather. And when I run this link, it will run this function, and then it will retrieve data. As you can see, fetch the data and then set the data, and then display the data from here. And that's all for my API for the front end. Thank you. And for the reflection of this project, I was feeling very happy that I had an opportunity to learn how to use React and also use MongoDB at the same time, and it was really hard for me to catch up to use to use the React, due to I have no any of the experience on using this kind of library, and a lot of things that I learned from this project, and I also facing a lot of problem when I was trying to develop this API, and at the end I also solved those problems that I met, and I was very happy, and thanks for Indy for giving me this opportunity to learn how to create my own API. And that's all for my reflection. Thank you.